Welcome to another new Max 101 video. I know I'm wearing the same shirt in all these. Can you tell I filmed a whole bunch of videos in the same day? I'm going to be talking to you today about the Type 6 trains. Back in 2015, Trimet received the Type 5s and they gradually entered service, numbered 521 through 538, with 538 of course being the newest train we have. And the last two, maybe three Type 5s entered service after the Orange Line opened, which was not originally planned, but it all worked out in the end anyway. But then, just 3 years later, in 2018, Trimet finished updating and overhauling the last of their Type 1s. Little side note, back in 2001, Trimet introduced the car body overhaul, 2002 maybe. Trimet introduced the car body overhaul program for the Type 1s to update them. That's why the Type 1s have paint that the Type 3, 4, and 5s have. They have the newer paint. Most of them. And they have purple seats, whereas if you were on the Max in the early 2000s and in the 90s and 80s, you'll know that they had red seats. And during this time they also got new windows, new AC units, the door equipment was replaced, propulsion and braking equipment was replaced to make the ride smoother. And that program went on from the early 2000s, and they planned to do all 26 Type 1s and have them all done. They were able to do roughly 2 Type 1 cars per year. Back in 2018, in I believe April, number 112 was the last of the Type 1s to undergo this update. But it didn't get everything. It did get the new seats, it did get the new paint, but it still has the original propulsion system, which is very shuddery. And it also has I believe it has the old braking system. Usually you'll know when you're on a Type 1 with the older system, because when you come to a stop, it's very rough. Or, well, no, it's even worse than that. You'll start leaning forward and then, you know. But on Type 1s where the braking system has been replaced, you know, you're coming to a stop and it's just much smoother, and then it's just a little bump to stop. Much better. And sometimes, if it's quiet enough, or if you're sitting near the middle, sometimes you'll hear the squeal of the friction brake kicking in, and it sounds very similar to the Type 3s, which already stopped smoother than the 2s do, because they had an updated braking system as well. So that's a for sure sign that the braking system has been updated. If you're in the Type 1 and it's coming to a stop and you can hear that squeal, I have a video of number 101 that shows that pretty well. I'll show that to you now. Now, why am I talking to you about all this? Well, Trimet originally basically planned to just overhaul all 26 of the Type 1s throughout that car body overhaul program. But and just keep them there because it's cheaper to overhaul a train and extend its life than it is to buy one brand new train car. Nonetheless, have to do that for 26 Type 1s. So, they decided to do that, but they ran into an issue. You notice if you get on numbers 102, 103, and 116, they still have the original Trimet stripes on the outside, and they have the red seats inside. They have very old propulsion. They have the original windows that you could open, because originally the trains did not come stock with air conditioning. They probably have the original door equipment. I do believe they have updated HVAC units, so that's probably the only thing they were able to update on them. What happened? Did they run out of money? No, they didn't run out of money. They ran out of parts. They just kind of stopped being made. All the parts being manufactured for the Type 1s just kind of stopped. And they had to do some makeshift things to make parts that would just work for them. And then once they kind of got fed up with, okay, we can't, you know, we need to have a perfectly good train car that we can just snag parts from. And that way, you know, we could use those parts to fix existing Type 1s. Now you know the story of number 106. 106 is the first retired train car. It happened a few years ago, and it's been sitting at El Monica for years now. And it looks very sad. It only has, I believe, 2 doors on it. The rest of them are all boarded up. The skirt pieces are missing. I think the Cyclops is missing. The HVAC units are missing. The pantograph might be missing. Probably a bunch of seats are missing. The wheels are missing. It's on jacks now. That was, I think, more of a recent thing. It's pretty sad looking, but you can see it at El Monica. If you get off the train at El Monica and walk through the parking lot and go up to the fence line, you can kind of see it. Oh, no, you can see it pretty well over there. They have it right up in the front. Okay, so why did I just go over all of that? The reason is because now you know why they want to buy the Type 6s. The Type 1s served us very well, and I'm going to miss the Type 1s when they're gone because it's pretty much a large part of my childhood and teenage years when I was filming these. Now, as I would film the trains, you could tell which ones were doing good and which ones weren't. So you kind of have an idea of which ones they're probably going to retire next. 103, for example, you can just tell it's tired. I mean, it's very squeaky, it's really rough to ride, and it's been, it seems like it's out of service more than it's in service. So, yeah. But then you get ones like number, 126, or, for example, and that one runs really well. So, you can tell which ones will probably stick around for a while. 115, that's another one that runs really well. Now, there's 26 Type 1s, 101 through 126. And if you go on Wikipedia and read on the max rolling stock, you'll see the Type 6s on there, and they're numbered 601 through 626. And they're intended to replace all the Type 1s. So that'll be nice once that happens. Then, we're supposed to get 4 additional Type 6 trains for the Max Redline project. So it'll actually probably be number 601 through 630 that we're going to get. If you go on the Siemens Mobility website and you go to the S700 trains to see a description of basically how they are, you'll find this rendering right here. This rendering's been out for quite a few years, and it was pretty much the only thing that was showing us what the new Type 6s were going to look like. As you can see, obviously, it has Trimet's new paint scheme. That's the first thing that catches your eye immediately. If you look hard enough there, though, you might be able to see inside. Driver cabs at both ends. Yes, it's finally happening. The trains will be able to run as single cars. That was a big mistake with the 4s and 5s, removing the cabs. I understand why they did it on the Type 4s, because if they hadn't done it that way, there would have been considerably less seats in the train than there were in the 2s and 3s. So they removed the driver cab in the B end and added 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 extra seats back there. And they did the same with the Type 5s, except only 6 extra seats back there. And it did increase the seating capacity, but then if something goes wrong on one of the trains, you're screwed. You have to take the whole thing out of service. You can't just remove one car and take it back to the yard or whatever. You can't, and if you're running some sort of shuttle train, or what if something happened and you had to run the car as a single car, now you have to do a Type 2 or Type 3. Type 1s can technically run as single cars, but they only really do it for out-of-service runs or maybe training runs. And that's just because, well, they're not wheelchair accessible. The 2s and 3s are fully wheelchair accessible, so they can run as single cars. The 4s and 5s, again, they technically can, but they do not, because they only have an operating cab on one end, and there is technically a way to operate it from the B end as well. We're not getting into that. The Type 6s have fixed all of that with giving us an appropriate number of seats as well as cabs on both ends. Hopefully I remember to link this down below, but a few years ago, Siemens Mobility made a booklet, and if you go to page 24 of this booklet, you'll see a different angle of the Type 6 rendering. And you'll notice that it has the Type 5 headlights. But, that I want you to pay attention to that. It's basically just a Type 5 repainted with the new color scheme. That was a few years ago. And again, that booklet that I've linked in the description will show that on page 24. And it'll show you the seating layout and everything. And it'll give you some facts and information, top speed, maximum incline, stuff like that. But remember how that Type 6 looked. It had the Type 5 headlights, the 3 circular headlights coming in. Well, Now if you find a Type 6 rendering, it looks like this, and it has vastly different headlights. Okay, now remember how that looked, okay? Had those cool little headlights. Now take a look at Seattle's S700 trains that entered service back in May. They have the same headlights. So it's pretty much going to be like that. Now, let's go over all the new things that we know of in the Type 6s. New exterior paint, duh. Cabs at both ends, duh. If you've been paying attention, you would have known those already. Electronic maps. If you look in that Type 6 rendering, either one from that front angle like that, if you zoom in, you can kind of see the electronic maps. If you want to know what the electronic maps will probably look like, there's a couple good videos of the S700s that are running in Seattle that show those in action. Now, if you notice on the Seattle trains, if you've watched any videos like I have, I'll link one down below. The door frames light up. The whole door frame. Like, you know how on the Type 4s and 5s, there's just a circle that will flash kind of an amber color when the doors are closing? Yeah, in Seattle, the whole door frame lights up, or at least the sides light up. I don't think the Type 6s are going to be getting those, although that would be awesome if they did. But I'm pretty sure we didn't get anything that cool. But yeah, it's very interesting to watch. I would imagine we're just still going to have the circular lights on both ends that will light up in the door frames. I wish they had a separate color, like a blue light or something, for when the wheelchair ramps are going out, because a lot of people will just stand there at the door while the wheelchair ramp comes out, and it's like, why isn't the door opening? But the end two doors are open, so it'd be nice to have some sort of different flashing blue color for when the bridge plates are being used. I don't know why I went way off of the scope of this video, but we also know that the doors are going to be a little bit wider. Even that packet that I linked in the description on page 24, it even mentions that the doors will be slightly wider to allow more passengers to go in and out, which will reduce the dwell times at stations. So we know that will be a thing too. I don't know how noticeable that's going to be, but you know, it's a welcome addition, of course. Now, somebody commented on a recent video saying, I wonder if the Type 6s are going to have Wi-Fi on board. Well, back in 2018 or whatever, when they had the design portion for this train, and you know, what do you want to see in the next generation of Max cars? They did mention, you know, a lot of people said they were also going to look into additional options, including Wi-Fi and USB charging slots. Are those going to be a thing? Well, I'm not sure. There are no real renderings of the inside of what the Type 6s will look like, so it's kind of hard to tell whether or not there's USB plugs or anything. I'm somehow doubtful of that because Portland is a great city. I like Portland, but there are a lot of disgusting Portlanders, and you know, people would shove gum in there, or I don't know, I just have a bad vibe about the whole USB plug thing. It would be useful, but on a simple light rail train, I'm not so sure. Maybe on Amtrak or something like that, that would make a little more sense, where you're going to be on there for longer, or you're going to be getting yourself much more comfortable than you would on the Max. I just don't see it being a good idea. What if you were standing? Now you got to reach over and plug. I don't know. To me, it just doesn't really seem like a very good idea. Wi-Fi, however, well, we know it's possible. If you watched my recent video on the West, you know that, well, there's Wi-Fi on the West trains, and they've been doing that since 2009. So we know it's possible to put Wi-Fi on board the trains. I hope that it does. I really hope that it does have Wi-Fi, but I have this strange feeling that they've said multiple times, you know, these are going to be very similar to the Type 5s, just more up to date. Well, you know, I'm not sure. My opinion, I really hope it has Wi-Fi, but I have a feeling it's not going to. Well, come back in this video in a few years and see if I'm right. Or not even in 1 year, really. Let's talk about that. Before COVID happened and screwed everybody's dreams up, Trimet announced that this train, number 601, the first one, would be being built and it could enter service as early as, those are the key words, as early as fall 2021. In my brain I was like, yeah, right, I doubt it. Well, then COVID happened and pushed all of that by quite a few months. So, then they updated the Wikipedia page for it and said now they're expected to enter service spring 2022, or maybe spring, oh no, they said around spring 2022. We don't have them yet, but I will make a video when maybe around the time they first get delivered, and maybe I'll head out to Ruby Junction and see if we can spot it. I don't know, it's going to be pretty hard to do. They always get them delivered to Ruby Junction, and unfortunately that's really far out from where I live, so but you know, it'll be worth it for the YouTube channel, right? So then, because COVID happened and delayed the arrival of number 601, it's also delaying the retirement of the Type 1s, which if you're anything like me, you know, I want to get the last of the Type 1s as much as possible. I always go out of my way to ride the Type 1s because I want to be able to remember them after they're gone. Well, this is going to give us a little bit of extra time. I want to get extra pictures and videos of them still in action so that I can look back on it in 2050 and say, man, those were cool. I remember the Type 1s and 2s. You know, at that point, the 2s will probably be nearing the end of their lifespan as well. And maybe even the 3s. So, you know, you want to get as many videos of this as you can now so that your grandchildren or whatever can look back on these videos and say, wow, yeah, it's weird to see those in action instead of in a museum or converted into a restaurant or a homeless shelter or a, you know, whatever they may be turned into. When PSU had that little design thing to say, what should we do with the Type 1s to retire them? What should they be turned into? I don't know how I missed this in the actual video, but I'm currently editing it right now, and, well, we do have some information on what the Type 6s are going to look like, and what they actually look like under construction. Siemens recently did a video where they were showing off new rail cars that were being built. And in the background, you could easily, well, kinda sorta easily see an actual Type 6 being built in the background. You can just barely see the top of it with the blue paint and the orange diagonal stripes. It's very cool to see. I guess I'll make update videos and post them in cards or in the links in the description if I find out more information about the Type 6s, or if one gets delivered soon. But until then, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.